Welcome to Superstitions and Traditions. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Trish.
And today is Point of View Historical Edition. And we are going to talk about the Black Angels who were nurses at Seaview Hospital.
Okay.
Who were instrumental in documenting and tracking the efficacy of tuberculosis treatments.
Okay.
I didn't write a story for this one. Tuberculosis, I don't remember exactly when it started, but it was the mid-1800s.
Okay.
That we had this big...
I can't remember the exact...
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So, consumption was the term. You'll see death certificates of people who died from consumption.
Yes.
Consumption was tuberculosis. Because of the way it wasn't like the flu that hit you and within a week you were dead. Tuberculosis hit you and you lived for years wasting away to nothing.
Right.
So until we knew what it was and where it came from and all of that, it was consumption. When it hit and it was this mass epidemic, miasma was a common belief for most illnesses, which was that it's just in the air. You can't escape it. You can't prevent it. You're lucky or you're not.
Yeah. You either get it or you don't. And it's out there floating around.
Yes. So when it came, we're studying and learning that maybe miasma isn't really the cause for most everything.
Oh, but hey,
during
that time,
there was no real concept of germs and microorganisms and things like that. Miasma was the cause.
Yes,
you breathed it in, and it was smells and things like that would cause, like they would during the bubonic plague would prevent bubonic plague by carrying flowers around and sniffing them.
Yes.
Just, that was all because of the belief in miasma. So we have tuberculosis. There's no cure. There's no rhyme or reason for it. We don't know where it came from. Mid-1800s, and we move on into the 20th century with it. During the 20s, there is the Great Migration. Black Americans in the South, especially after the Red Summer of 1919,
right,
that are fleeing the South and moving up north where there's still segregation, but there's not rampant violence.
Right, so they have a better chance.
Yes. So they know they're not necessarily going to be welcomed with open arms and treated equally, but they're not going to be lent just for looking at a white person. And at the same time, we have World War I. And during World War I, a lot of doors that were closed to women, white women specifically, were opened. So there were other careers beyond teaching and nursing. Tuberculosis is highly contagious. There's no cure. It was around this same time with the Great Migration and World War I that we figured out, and I can't remember the name of the man, but figured out that there's a microbe.
Right.
That causes something that causes. We actually found it. We've discovered this microbe that causes tuberculosis. We still have no treatment. We still have no cure. Doors are opening up to white women. They're leaving the nursing profession, especially those that are in the sanatoriums.
Okay.
Seaview Hospital Sanatorium in Staten Island, they're facing a massive nursing shortage. So to answer this shortage, they post a national help wanted ad, basically. Okay, specifically targeting Black nurses. So the nursing field, it's called the white flight. White nurses can now be other things besides nurses or teachers, and so they're finding different professions. There's an independence for women at this time. That is new.
Okay, what year are we about?
We're 1920s.
1920s, okay.
To help with their situation at Seaview at the sanatorium, they put out a national help wanted ad specifically targeting Black nurses, saying, we will house you, give you a job, and if you aren't fully trained, we will send you to school.
Okay.
So
that's like a way out for them.
Yes.
I mean, that's like, okay,
yes.
I have a place to stay. I don't have to pay rent. I'm getting, I'm trained. I have a skill. I'll be employable. I'll have money.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And sanatoriums, they believed at this time that especially with TB, that you needed to have a lot of sunlight, a lot of open air. So depending on the sanatorium, not that all of them were good. I'm sure there were horrible sanatoriums as well, but there were some that were a little more upscale.
Yes. Which tuberculosis was associated with uncleanliness and poverty, uncouth lifestyles.
It's only the poor,
yes.
They thought. If you're the poor.
Yeah. At Seaview, it is solely for tuberculosis. There are different wards. There's a stigma to it.
If you have to go to the sanatorium.
Well,
yes.
if you have
it at all.
Yes. If you have TB, you are a lower class citizen, right. Regardless of where your social standing really is. It was like definitive proof to the people around you. So Seaview, we have they called them the Black Angels. They would move to New York, and they got their training at Harlem Hospital. And then from there, they went to Seaview.
Okay, so they trained at Harlem and then went to Seaview. Okay.
Seaview campus had several wards for patients. It also had barracks for nursing staff and doctors. And so they could live right there. At this point, there wasn't enough space to accommodate all the staff they needed in the barracks.
More people, not enough places to stay.
Yes. Okay. So the Black nurses that moved in, until a room opened up in the nursing barracks or the nursing housing, lived in Harlem. So they would travel for their shift at Seaview in their nursing whites and hats. Mm-hmm. So then there's a stigma with this also. Right. Like, not only did you run away from people with TB, you saw a Black woman in nursing uniform, you ran from them too, because they are around it every day. And so because they're still kind of uncertain about Koch discovered in 1882. He's the first one to go, hey, but they still hadn't quite figured out all the other stuff about it. Right. And so across the nation, there's like 6,000 hospitals.
There was one in Oklahoma.
Well, not just TB hospitals in general.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
6,000 or 7,000 hospitals in general. And only less than 500 of these hospitals would allow Black nursing staff. So Seaview was one of them already. That would allow. Okay. And once the white flight, those white nurses started leaving, then they solely geared their hiring towards Black nurses. Okay. So they are working in this hospital, exposed to TB constantly. And like you said, the outside, what did they call that treatment? There was a name for the treatment of putting somebody out on the porch.
Yes, the bright light, the treatment there, and set them out in the fresh air. I cannot remember.
I can't remember the term for it, but
they thought that would definitely help. And I'm sure in some ways there were subtle things that it did, but not enough to.
So, Black nurses that are being allowed to work in, still not majority of the hospitals, but in some now. However, we're not allowing them to hold any kind of supervisory position anywhere. So at Seaview specifically, It is Black nurses that are doing the work.
They are on the floor
They're
with
on the
patients.
floor. They're the ones
that
filling out the logs and tracking the efficacy of the treatments and
being exposed to
being
tuberculosis
exposed.
because it does travel on the droplets. Because okay, all right.
But they're supervised by a white nurse that sits in an office and makes decisions on their behalf.
Okay.
We also at this time have discovered masks, which we kind of knew from the bubonic plague, even though the purpose of the mask wasn't to shield them, it was to stuff herbs
to make
treat the mind. But
so
we kind of we've learned a few things from that, and there is a debate over whether or not wearing a mask would be effective. So at Seaview specifically, the white supervising nurse has given lectures and written papers over how bad it is for nursing staff to wear masks.
Of course.
So she's making this decision for the women who are being spit on or coughed on, sometimes absolutely spit on.
Because that's its mode of transmission.
Yes.
It does travel. Okay.
And so every
Cough,
time...
sneezes, talks, spit on. Okay.
Also, there is an organization called the National Nursing Association, which is still in existence today and fights for fair treatment and employment for nurses and does great things.
Right.
And did great things at the time.
Yes.
For white nurses. They would not allow Black nurses to join. We also have the NAACP had started in 1909. The Black nurses saying they have a right to join this also. And so,
same protection under the law.
Yes. So they ended up starting an association for Black nurses, which was a combination of the Nursing Association and NAACP doing the work of both.
Okay.
So we've got that going on.
And when I have to have kind of a side note, I'm so sorry, because when people ask, well, why is there a Black association for nurses? Oftentimes it's not because they felt they needed their own, but because they had to have their own. Because they weren't allowed in the other association.
Well,
and so they've created the Black Association for Nurses.
And, it also with this particular association, the Black Association for Nursing, and I can't remember the title of it, but so whenever they were finally 20, 30 years later accepted into the American Nursing Association, we're not needed anymore. So closed it. There are other sanatoriums across not only the US but in Europe as well.
Right.
So there are all of these pharmaceutical companies that are working night and day to come up with a cure for TB, or at least a treatment plan.
Something.
And they've made progress. They have pushed out a lot of drugs to help. Streptomycin, which is still used today, but
it's not the
real
drug
effective.
Choice, but
was the wonder drug of the time when it came out.
Yes.
And so these drug companies are using the sanatoriums to test their drugs. So they develop it, they test it on animals. Once they see what it does in animals, they have to move on to humans.
So this would be where they start the trials.
Yes.
Okay.
Seaview was chosen fairly regularly as a trial hospital. So the Black nurses that aren't allowed into the Nursing Association because they were not even allowed supervisory positions.
Right.
Are the ones that are administering these drugs. They're the ones tracking the efficacy of these drugs, doing the logs, watching for side effects, alerting the doctors when they know it's not working or it's causing this on top of.
Right.
Ultimately, in the 40s. I mean, there is lots happening in the world at this time anyway, especially in the US.
Busy time period.
Yes. 40s. We've tried streptomycin. We know that it has its good points, but it's not the wonder drug. Their bodies built up an immunity to it after so long. So it didn't cure it. Isoniazid is being created by 3. 1 in Germany and 2 in the US.
Okay.
But they each have their own name for it. Essentially, it's the same thing. So the 2 in the US have their aha moments around the same time.
Do tell.
To move beyond animal testing and to push it out to human trials.
Sounds a lot like the COVID vaccine and
Yes.
Pfizer and
Moderna.
Moderna
Yes.
coming together at
The
the same
exact same
time to
situation.
go into trials. Okay.
So, they pick their sanatoriums,
Okay.
approach the doctors and say, here's what we have. Are you willing to do a human trial here for us? Of course, the doctor at Seaview said yes, and then the doctor at another sanatorium. Not that any of them were like well respected, but was more like uppity.
A fancy.
Okay.
A fancier sanatorium.
Yes.
Okay.
So they are running the trials at these 2 different places.
Is there any monetary benefit for the hospital for the trials? Do you know?
I don't know. What I can tell you is the doctor that ran Seaview, Rob is a weird name, Rob is Tech or something like that. He worked there for 17 years and never received a salary. He volunteered to.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Okay.
A white man, a white doctor.
Okay.
So they approach him. He says, yes, we'll do this. So he calls in his nursing staff, which is Black women.
Okay.
At this point, when isoniazid is out and about, Black women are allowed to be supervisors, Black nursing staff. So we've made strides.
Okay. A little progress there.
So,
we can be
yeah.
supervisors.
We've made strides. I'm white. I was always going to be in the National Nursing Association, but Black nurses are allowed in the National Nursing Association. They
hold supervisory roles.
They hold supervisory roles. So he calls his nurses in and he says, this is what we're doing. We have to keep it hush-hush. We can't tell people. They designated 2 wards, one for females, one for male patients, and they started the testing.
No patient permission, just the testing.
Well, no. The patients knew.
Okay.
It was the worst of the worst. The patients that we know they're going to die unless some miracle drug.
Okay.
So the nurses helped the doctor pick the patients to go to these wards. The doctor sat down with each patient individually and said, this is what it is. We don't know. This is what it's done in mice and guinea pigs and hogs and whatever else they tested on. Do you want to try it? And when they said yes, they got shipped off to this ward.
Okay.
Everything was hush-hush. Don't tell anybody we're experimenting. Don't.
The public.
The public, yes.
Okay.
So the trial is going incredibly well. It's wonderful. People are making huge turnarounds. Like people that they talked about the things you see when you're about to die, like the
end of
Grim
life
Reaper standing there, the angel coming to collect you.
Uh-huh.
I mean, these are people that have been telling nurses the sky is here to collect me.
All of the stages that they tell you, yes, you will go through.
These are people who know they are dying. They know that this is, even if it's not an option, their only option. So they agree to it, and within weeks are making full recoveries. It appears that way. So trials run for different periods of time, but this one I think was supposed to run for 6 months, and then there was 6 months with no drug to see the long-term effects of the drug. At some point during the 6 months take the drug, it somehow got leaked that these people were making experiments. That there's a new drug, an experiment drug, and there was also a deal made between the doctor at Seaview and the doctor.
I was going to ask. This is at Seaview. So how's the other?
Just the same.
Okay.
And then the one in Europe is just the same.
Okay.
So
results are all.
The results are the same.
Okay.
Between the 3 different pharmaceutical companies that are manufacturing and testing, and the different hospitals that are testing each one. It is a miracle drug within the first couple of months of the study, but we're supposed to be sworn to secrecy. You also have to keep in mind that there are still families coming to visit, and
so it gets out.
Eventually it gets out. One of the biggest things with it was they did not want the Black nurses to have the credit for finding for their involvement in the wonder drug. So they have this big meeting, and they agree at this time we're going to release our findings together. That way no one's above the other. It's all the same.
Okay.
But Seaview somehow, and I guess they've never really discovered who leaked. More than likely it was a family member of somebody that was going to die. That is
now. And they're like excited. Grandma's come back. She's doing great.
So before there's any real side effects discovered, it leaks. And journalists swarm Seaview. And the Black nurses get the credit.
People aren't going to be happy about that. What's wrong with people? What is so wrong with people? Okay, keep going.
After all of this happens, then they start to realize that there are psychological effects from niazide. And it isn't the wonder drug we thought it was.
So the side effects are starting to come out a little bit.
There's almost seizure-like activity, kind of, where they have flashes of loss of motor skills and things like that. There's also, at my job, we would call it maladaptive behavior, where we are just acting ugly.
That just happens. I suffer from that a lot.
Yes. Just explosive rage for a minute.
Oh, I don't have rage. But
so we know that this is part of this side effect, and by the time it's all said and done, what we end up with is a combination of PAS, streptomycin, and niazide.
Okay.
To treat
kind
tuberculosis.
Of a cocktail at different stages because it is a bacteria, so unlike a virus, it should be.
Right. So the Black nurses, the Black angels, which is what they come to be called by their patients, are the ones that are credited by their patients because that's the faces they see.
Yes.
The nurses did not develop the drug.
Right. But they made sure
it was administered. They tracked the dosing. They did all the reporting and logging and observation. So thanks to their work, people got to go home. There was also some hemorrhaging from it too.
I love how you just throw that in. They made a little hemorrhaging. So was the hemorrhaging because of the drugs,
because
or did they think the long-term effects of the tuberculosis, but the drug.
Right, the drug. So it was the Black Angels that first noticed this.
Hemorrhaging?
These hemorrhaging.
The other patients too that were hemorrhaging during this time.
It was a rare side effect of it.
Okay.
But they're the ones that noticed the psychological, behavioral, emotional side effect from the drug. They're the ones that noticed all of the things. In the 60s, they had the little cocktail of PAS and streptomycin and niazide that cured TB.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, cured TB. And Seaview closed, and everything was forgotten, and the contributions of the Black nurses to the cure was forgotten, and everybody went on, except for the patients. The patients never forgot their nurses, and were sending, Christmas cards and
because they made that bond, and
Yes.
they really did. I mean, they really were angels when you think about during that time and how TB was spread. I mean, there was a test that was developed, and like, remember the skin test? You put it under there and you see if it does all that. But to know, I mean, every day that you're going in with those patients, and you can.
at some point they end up bedridden, and it's the nurse that's bathing and shaving and doing everything for you, feeding you.
I mean, that's just, first of all, hats off to nurses everywhere, because I couldn't do it, and lots of respect to those who are called, because it truly is a calling to be in that profession. But especially to the Black nurses during that time are like trailblazers, they're the one that blazed the way to become a member of the Nursing Association, and to work in the hospitals, and to do the trials, and to risk their lives. I mean, and you kind of parallel that as you think about the COVID pandemic and how the nurses during that were going in and not knowing. I mean, it's kind of that same fear, because they didn't know. They knew even less about how things were transmitted then as we do now. And they were still willing to go in and to do part of it out of, it's the right thing to do, but part of it because there weren't other options.
Their desire to be a nurse and to help people and to heal people. And that was the only door that was open to them. So, they still had that desire to help. And if this is what I got, this is what I'll do.
I got to do what I got to do. Oh, history. History is one of those things that you have to, you have to love, you have to embrace, you have to respect all of those that come before you, that have done all those things, that you just take a minute and you stop and you go, what would I have done in that situation?
Right. And that was my biggest problem with this particular subject, was I know what I would have done. I know what I would do now as a mom, a single mom to 3 girls. I know I would have been one of those white fighters that said, I will operate the switchboard and
as your
somebody else.
As your gay aunt, I would tell you that is what I would want you to do, because you do have that family you need to protect. And I would say, send me.
Yeah. I mean, now they were recruiting 16, 17-year-old girls.
Oh, see.
And if at that age, I probably would have, if I want to be a nurse, then yes, I'll do it. But I know who I am in this moment right now, in this point in my life. I would be the one saying bye.
You have kids that you have to take care of.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't.
I was fascinated by the story. I'm in awe of these women that were working with TB patients well into their 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yes.
Exposing themselves every day.
That's how I feel about nurses. I love there was a time when I thought, because I love science and I love how the body works and I love all those things, and I thought, I'll become a nurse or a doctor. And then I thought, I can't do those things. I mean, I respect and love the people that can, but I'm just not called to that area. So you have to.
I mean, I know, like, when I went to school to teach. That was, and I don't even think that I really ever wanted to be a teacher. I think I was just, I am a Pruitt, and that's what we do. And
you do come from a long line of us.
So fairly quickly in college, I changed my major from, I knew that teaching was not the job for me, because I was going into special education. So I knew I wanted to work with people with developmental disabilities, which is my profession now.
Right.
And what I was put on earth to do.
Oh, yes, it is. It is your calling, and you were tremendous with them. 38 years I did it. I loved almost every minute of it.
You did it, and both of your sisters.
Both my sisters, my mom. I mean, in a roundabout kind of way. Sunday school. Grandma Bertha was a teacher.
Yeah.
I still have like her first paychecks and all
of
that
really?
Stuff. Oh my gosh.
I have one of her textbooks.
Oh, do you really? Gosh, see, and all the list of things they had to do back then too, and you're thinking.
And Gracie, her sister was a teacher.
Yes, that is our legacy.
Yeah. That is who we are.
But I will tell you, as a coach and a teacher, vomit. It could stop a classroom it could clear the classroom. It could stop practice. Henceforth, and chickens, why I did not go into nursing either, because
Yeah.
God bless those that can deal with all of those bodily functions.
Nursing was never on my radar
No.
at all. But I have a lot of
Okay.
respect for those that...
I was a Red Cross, those little candy stripers.
Were you really?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. So I had the little dress that I wore because, back in the day, yes, I had to wear my little dress, and I had little stripers. And my first job was I had to take the trays into the room.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Promise you, I take my little tray. I've delivered a few. It's my first day. I'm taking the trays in. So I go to this one room and I sit it down, and the lady in the bed next to her, and I notice this person is very still. Okay, so I set my tray down, and this lady over here just says she's not going to need that. And I'm like, she might be hungry. And so then I go and she said again, she's not going to need that. So I set her tray down, and then I go back over and discover in horror that the woman...
She's not going to need that?
She's not going to need that. So I had to go get my person and explain to them what had transpired, I think, and then that was my last day of candy striping.
So you worked as a candy striper. You fed several people that needed to be fed, and then a dead woman.
And then I did my due diligence and moved on to teaching.
After you fed the dead woman, you decided it
That's not my calling.
your job. I get it.
But hats off to all of those who can and do and continue to take care of us.
Right. Anyway. All right. Well, let us know what you think. If you've heard of... So the reason I heard about these nurses is like to read nonfiction. The Black Angels, the untold story of the nurses who helped cure tuberculosis by Maria Similios. All right. Well, like, comment, share, do all of that stuff. It makes us super happy and helps us out. And we will see you next time.
Alrighty. You guys have a great day.